My name is Rick, 32 years old, and I grew up hearing the same phrase whenever I achieved something. Sorry, we just can't afford to celebrate right now. Meanwhile, I watched my parents rent out ballrooms with crystal chandeliers for my sister Amanda's every accomplishment. For years, I said nothing, swallowed the hurt, and quietly built my own success. That changed the day I closed on my private lake house and posted those 6 words that shattered their perception. Before I dive into how I finally showed them what they missed out on, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt invisible to the people who should have seen you. The most. I grew up in a middle-class suburb just outside Boston, Massachusetts. Our neighborhood was the kind where all the houses looked similar enough that visitors would occasionally pull into the wrong driveway. My father Thomas worked at a local bank, starting as a teller and eventually working his way up to loan officer. My mother Margaret taught 3rd grade at the elementary school 3 blocks from our house. On paper, we were the typical American family: husband, wife, son, and daughter, living in a modest 3-bedroom colonial with a neatly trimmed lawn. Amanda came along when I was 3. From my earliest memories, she was the sunshine child. Golden curls, bright blue eyes, and a laugh that made strangers stop and smile. I was the opposite, serious with straight brown hair and a quiet demeanor that adults called mature and kids called boring. Amanda sparkled in every room she entered. I just existed. Our house wasn't large, but it was comfortable. My parents had purchased it the year before I was born, and over time, they'd updated different areas as finances allowed. The kitchen had been renovated when I was 10, the bathrooms when I was 14. My bedroom, however, remained frozen in time. The same blue walls my father had painted before I was born, furniture from yard sales, and a small desk where I would spend hours studying. Amanda's room was different. When she turned 8, my parents completely transformed her space with lavender walls, custom curtains, and a white canopy bed that I overheard cost nearly $2,000. She's a growing girl, my mother explained, when I asked why my broken desk chair couldn't be replaced. She needs her own special space. The walls of our home told the story of our family dynamic. The hallway was a gallery of Amanda's achievements: dance recital photos, soccer team portraits, academic awards. My school photos were there too, tucked between Amanda's larger framed accomplishments. If you looked closely, you might spot my honor roll certificates, usually partially covered by Amanda's more recent participation ribbons. Even extended family reinforced the pattern. At gatherings, relatives would flock to Amanda, cooing over her latest dance routine or soccer goal. Conversations with me were brief, perfunctory. "How's school?" they'd ask, already looking over my shoulder for my sister. "Still getting good grades?" They rarely waited for my answer. Despite the imbalance, I found my own path early. Numbers made sense to me. They were predictable, reliable. By 6th grade, I was helping my father with the family budget, though I couldn't help noticing how certain categories had Amanda's needs built in: dance lessons, soccer equipment, competition fees. At 12, I started my first business, mowing lawns in our neighborhood. I saved every dollar in a metal box hidden under my bed. Sometimes at night, I'd count the bills, imagining what I might build someday. Not for their approval. I'd already realized that was an impossible goal, but for myself. While I was building my little lawn enterprise, Amanda was discovering her talents. She excelled at dance, particularly ballet. She was also a natural athlete, making the soccer team and later the track team. My parents never missed a recital or a game. They rearranged work schedules, canceled plans, and drove hours to out-of-town competitions. Her trophies needed their own shelf, then their own bookcase. I still remember sitting alone at my science fair as a 13-year-old. My project on investment compounding had won first place, but my parents were at Amanda's regional dance competition 3 hours away. The blue ribbon felt hollow as I packed up my display boards myself. Later that night, when they finally came home, my mother patted my shoulder and said, "That's nice, honey," before launching into a detailed account of Amanda's perfect pirouettes. The awareness grew slowly. At first I thought perhaps I wasn't trying hard enough, wasn't achieving enough, but gradually, pattern recognition kicked in. The same skill that made me good at math helped me understand my family's emotional economy. There simply wasn't enough currency to go around, and Amanda's needs were always prioritized. One night when I was 14, I overheard my parents in the kitchen. "We really need to tighten the belt this month," my father said, reviewing bills spread across the table. "Amanda's summer dance intensive is $1,500. "It's worth it," my mother replied, without hesitation. "You've seen how talented she is. We can't hold her back." The next day, I asked if I could attend a weekend business camp at the local community college. The cost was $200. "Oh, Rick," my mother sighed. "We just can't afford extras right now. Maybe next year." I stopped asking after that. Instead, I became increasingly self-sufficient. I bought my own school supplies with lawn mowing money. I learned to take the bus when my parents couldn't drive me. I became the kid who never needed anything, because I knew the answer would always be no. The more I withdrew, the less they seemed to notice. Our family dynamic had been established. Amanda was the star, the one with potential and dreams worth investing in. I was reliable, responsible Rick, who didn't need much attention. In their minds, this wasn't neglect, it was simply responding to their children's different personalities. The fact that these personalities were partially shaped by their treatment never seemed to occur to them. High school should have been different. My academic achievements became impossible to ignore. Perfect GPA, president of the business club, winner of state-level competitions. Still, the pattern held. When I made the honor roll my freshman year, my certificate was dutifully tacked to the refrigerator. 2 weeks later, it was replaced by Amanda's participation ribbon from a dance showcase. When I pointed this out, my mother seemed genuinely confused. "You don't need constant validation, Rick," she said, as if my desire to have my achievements acknowledged was some kind of character flaw. "Besides, Amanda needs more encouragement. Things don't come as easily to her as they do to you." Junior year, I won a scholarship to an intensive science program at MIT, one of only 15 students in the state selected. The award ceremony was on a Thursday evening. My parents promised they would attend, but that morning my mother informed me they couldn't make it. Amanda's regional dance competition had a last-minute schedule change, she explained. "Not quite meeting my eyes. She needs us there for support. You understand, right? You're always so independent." I went alone, shook hands with the university president alone, and rode the bus home alone with my certificate in a leather folder that no one ever asked to see. Senior year brought more of the same. I won $500 in a business plan competition, the first real money I'd earned from my entrepreneurial ideas rather than manual labor. My parents congratulated me, then asked if I could loan them the money for Amanda's new dance shoes. Her competition was coming up, and her old ones were simply worn out. I handed over the cash, knowing I'd never see it again. It wasn't even considered a sacrifice, just the expected family contribution. My high school graduation should have been a celebration. I was valedictorian, had secured a partial scholarship to the state university, and had already lined up a summer internship at a local real estate office. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock on a Saturday. My parents attended, sitting stiffly in their seats while I gave my speech. They left immediately, after I received my diploma, missing the reception entirely. Amanda's dance studio had a rehearsal at 4, and they couldn't risk being late. College brought physical distance but little emotional change. I attended the state university 40 minutes from home, close enough to visit, but far enough to build my own life. Amanda, 2 years later, was accepted to a private arts college on the other side of the country. My parents took out a second mortgage to cover what her scholarships didn't. When I asked why they hadn't done the same for me, my father looked surprised. "You got a partial scholarship, and the state school is affordable," he said. "We always knew you'd find a way to make it work." I worked 3 jobs, while taking a full course load in business administration with a focus on real estate development. Every semester I made the dean's list. My parents acknowledged this with brief good jobs during our increasingly rare phone calls, most of which ended abruptly when Amanda called on the other line. My junior year, I landed a prestigious internship with a commercial real estate firm in Boston. The program concluded with an awards dinner where I received recognition for a development proposal I'd created. I invited my parents, hoping that perhaps the formal setting would help them see my accomplishments in a new light. They canceled the morning of the event. Amanda's sorority was having an important networking function, and they'd flown out to support her. These connections could be crucial for her future, my mother explained over the phone. I attended the dinner alone, accepted my award alone, and added the plaque to a box under my bed with all the other acknowledgments my family had never seen. While my achievements were background noise, Amanda's life events were family milestones. Her 16th birthday featured a rented banquet hall, a professional photographer, and a live band. Mine had been marked with a store-bought cake after we returned home from Amanda's dance recital. When Amanda got accepted to college, my parents organized a surprise weekend trip to New York City to celebrate. When I'd been accepted to university, they'd said congratulations during a commercial break of a TV show they were watching. Amanda's college graduation warranted a party with 50 guests, catered food, and expensive gifts. For mine, we had dinner at an Olive Garden, which was interrupted 3 times by calls about Amanda's upcoming job interview. When I moved into my first apartment, I rented a truck and moved everything myself while my family attended Amanda's beach weekend with her college friends. "We promised her months ago," my father said, when I mentioned the conflict. "You're good at figuring things out on your own." On the surface, I was. I developed a stoic exterior that revealed nothing of the hurt beneath. I became known for my calm, unflappable demeanor, a personality trait born of necessity rather than nature. But inside, the wounds deepened. The constant message that I was less deserving of celebration, less worthy of attention, less valued as a child, carved a hollow space inside me that no achievement could fill. At 25, I finally started therapy, not because my family suggested it, they never noticed my pain, but because a colleague mentioned how his sessions had helped him process childhood neglect. For the first time, I spoke aloud the patterns I'd observed throughout my life. My therapist helped me see that my parents' behavior wasn't my fault, wasn't something I deserved or had caused. Some parents, she explained gently, unconsciously, choose a favorite child based on their own unresolved needs and insecurities. It doesn't mean you're less worthy of love. I began keeping a journal documenting not just the painful memories, but also my determination to create a different future. I won't be defined by their inability to see me. I wrote one night, "Someday I'll build something so magnificent they won't be able to look away." Little did I know how prophetic those words would become. At 28, I was promoted to junior partner at the real estate firm where I'd been working since graduation. After years of 60-hour weeks, cold calls, and relentless networking, my dedication had paid off. This wasn't just a title change. It meant equity in the company, a significant salary increase and recognition in an industry I'd worked tirelessly to master. I made dinner reservations at an upscale steakhouse in downtown Boston, my first real attempt in years to create a celebration with my family. I called my parents 2 weeks in advance, explaining the significance of the promotion and how much it would mean to have them there. "Of course we'll come," my mother said. "This sounds important to you." I reserved a table for 3, ordered a special bottle of wine, and even bought a new suit for the occasion. 2 hours before the reservation, my phone rang. "Rick, I'm so sorry." My mother began, her voice laced with familiar apology. "We're not going to make it tonight. Amanda just called in tears. Her wedding planner quit, and she needs us to help her sort things out with the venue." I sat alone at a table set for 3, making small talk with a sympathetic server who kept glancing at the empty chairs. I ordered the celebration bottle anyway, drank 1 glass, and left the rest. The following day, I received a text from my father. "Sorry about dinner. Hope it went well. So proud of you, son." 6 months later came the deal that would change my professional trajectory. A large, mixed-use commercial property had been languishing on the market for years, considered too complicated and risky by most investors. I saw its potential immediately. The location was ideal, the bones were solid, and with the right renovations and tenants, it could be transformed from an eyesore to a landmark. I worked obsessively researching zoning laws, courting potential anchor tenants, securing financing options, and creating detailed renovation plans. When the deal finally closed, my commission was substantial, into the 6 figures, and my reputation in Boston real estate circles was solidified. That night, I called my parents, genuinely excited to share my news. "That's great, honey," my mother said distractedly. I could hear voices in the background, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. "Can I call you tomorrow? We're just in the middle of planning Amanda's baby shower. She's having twins, you know." I hadn't known. No one had thought to tell me I would be an uncle. I hung up and poured myself a glass of champagne in my empty apartment, toasting my reflection in the window overlooking the city. "Congratulations," I whispered to myself. "You did this." 2 months later came Amanda's wedding, an extravaganza that had been in planning for over a year. My parents had spared no expense. The historic Fairmont Copley Plaza ballroom, with its crystal chandeliers and gold-leafed ceiling, a 10-piece band, gourmet 5-course dinner, and flowers flown in from South America. I later learned they had taken out a second mortgage to cover the costs. Despite my minimal involvement in the wedding preparations, I hadn't even been invited to the engagement party due to an oversight in Amanda's planning. I was expected to contribute financially. My father called me one evening to discuss my portion of the wedding expenses. "We're all pitching in to make this special for your sister," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "We were thinking 10,000 would be fair from you." I agreed, without argument, writing the check and adding it to the mental ledger of familial imbalance I'd been keeping since childhood. At the wedding, I was seated at a table with distant cousins who asked if I was a friend of the groom. The following month, my parents invited me to Sunday dinner, a rare occurrence that should have been my first clue that something significant was happening. Amanda and her new husband Brian were there, both glowing with barely contained excitement. After the main course, Amanda stood up and made the announcement she was pregnant. The table erupted in celebration. My father opened champagne. He'd been chilling. My mother cried happy tears, and Brian received backslaps and congratulations. After 15 minutes of joyful chaos, my father raised his glass again. "And let's not forget Rick's good news," he said, turning to me, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "He got some kind of promotion at work." "Right, son." "That was 4 months ago, Dad," I said quietly. "I'm a junior partner now." "Well, better late than never to celebrate," he replied, with forced joviality, quickly turning the conversation back to baby names and nursery colors. I left early that night, driving back to my apartment with a heaviness that had become all too familiar. I was 30 years old, objectively successful, and still hoping for crumbs of parental recognition that never came. Then came the milestone that would ultimately change everything: my 30th birthday. I'd mentioned it casually to my parents during our last phone call, suggesting perhaps a small dinner to mark the occasion. They'd been vaguely affirmative, and I'd allowed myself a sliver of hope. The day came and went without a call, a text, or even a card. I worked late, came home to an empty apartment, and ordered takeout for one. 3 days later, my mother called as if nothing had happened. "We need your address," she said brightly. "We're sending out invitations to Amanda's gender reveal party and want to make sure you get yours." I provided my address mechanically, not mentioning the forgotten birthday. The invitation arrived the following week. Embossed cardstock announcing a celebration at the same ballroom where Amanda had been married. The same venue, I realized with a start, that I had suggested to my parents for a 30th birthday dinner. "We couldn't possibly afford something like that," my mother had said when I'd mentioned it months earlier. "Those places cost thousands to rent." I attended the gender reveal party out of obligation, watching as balloons and confetti in pink and blue exploded from elaborate decorations. My parents had spared no expense. Custom cocktails, a gourmet buffet, a professional photographer, and a custom-made cake that must have cost hundreds. Midway through the event, I overheard my mother talking to one of her friends. "It's worth every penny," she was saying, gesturing around the opulent ballroom. "We've never had money for extravagant celebrations, but for something this special, you find a way." Something inside me, something that had been bending for 30 years, finally broke. Without saying goodbye, I walked out of the ballroom, got into my car, and drove straight home. That night, I made a decision that would alter the course of my family relationships forever. I would stop seeking the validation I would never receive. Instead, I would build something so undeniable they would have to confront the disparity themselves. The Monday after the gender reveal party, I walked into my firm's office with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I scheduled a meeting with the senior partners and laid out my 5-year plan. I wanted to focus on developing my own investment portfolio alongside my work with the firm. I would continue bringing in clients and closing deals, but I needed flexibility to pursue personal projects. To my surprise, they agreed readily. My track record spoke for itself, and the arrangement would benefit both parties. With that conversation, my transformation began in earnest. I drastically reduced my time with family. Sunday dinners became monthly, then quarterly. Phone calls were brief and informational rather than emotional. When asked about my sudden distance, I cited work commitments, an excuse that went unquestioned because it matched their perception of me as the career-focused son. What my family didn't realize was that I was channeling all my emotional energy into creating something extraordinary. I immersed myself in research, identifying emerging vacation markets within 3 hours of Boston. I studied architectural trends, financing options, and tourism patterns. I created spreadsheets projecting return on investment for different property types and locations. My vision board became my North Star. Images of lakefront properties with expansive views, modern interiors with rustic touches, and outdoor spaces designed for both solitude and entertaining. I wasn't just planning a house, I was designing a statement. Professionally, I shifted into high gear. I arrived at the office before sunrise and left long after sunset. I expanded my client base by 30% within 6 months. I attended every industry event, real estate conference, and networking opportunity available. People began to notice. Colleagues commented on my intensity, clients appreciated my dedication, competitors eyed me warily. 18 months after my decision, I made my first major solo investment, a small 6-unit apartment building in an up-and-coming neighborhood. The property needed work, outdated systems, cosmetic issues, poor management, but the location was unbeatable, and I'd done my homework on the area's growth trajectory. I threw myself into the renovation project, learning from contractors during the day and researching materials and techniques at night. The process was exhausting, but exhilarating. For the first time, I was building something tangible that belonged solely to me, something no one could diminish or ignore. When the project was completed 6 months later, I had transformed a neglected building into a desirable property with a waiting list of potential tenants. More importantly, I'd turned a significant profit that I could reinvest in my next project. During this period, I met James, a contractor whose work ethic matched my own. Our professional relationship quickly evolved into friendship as we discovered shared experiences of family dynamics and personal resilience. James became my go-to partner for renovations, offering honest feedback and innovative solutions that elevated each project. "You've got an eye for potential," he told me one evening, as we walked through a property I was considering. "You see past what is to what could be. That's rare." With the success of the apartment building behind me, I refined my investment strategy. Lake properties, I realized, offered what I was looking for: appreciation potential, rental income opportunities, and the personal satisfaction I craved. I began systematically researching lake communities within a 3-hour radius of Boston, focusing on areas with growing tourist appeal, but still reasonable property values. Each successful project built my confidence and expanded my resources. I was no longer the overlooked son seeking validation. I was becoming a respected developer with a growing reputation. Industry publications began to mention my projects, and other investors sought my advice. While my professional transformation was visible to anyone paying attention, my personal development happened more quietly. I continued therapy, working through the layers of hurt and resentment that had accumulated over decades. I learned to recognize my own value, independent of family validation. I developed friendships with people who appreciated me for who I was, not what I could provide, or how I compared to someone else. I also focused on my physical well-being, establishing a gym routine that helped channel stress and build both strength and endurance. I overhauled my diet, cutting out the fast food and convenience meals that had fueled my 70-hour work weeks. My appearance changed gradually. Shoulders broadening, posture improving, expression lightening as internal burdens lifted. Then came the property that would become my masterpiece. I wasn't even looking to buy that day. James and I were surveying another location when the realtor mentioned a distressed sale on a lakefront property 20 minutes away. "The owners are facing foreclosure," she explained. "They've already moved out. Banks looking for a quick sale to avoid the foreclosure process. It needs work, but the location." She didn't need to finish her sentence. The moment we pulled up to the property, I knew. Situated on 3 acres, with 200 feet of private shoreline on Crystal Lake, The house itself was underwhelming. A 1980s construction with dated finishes and neglected maintenance. But the setting was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the water. A wraparound deck extended the living space outdoors. The property included a private dock and a small boathouse. As I walked through the empty rooms, I could see it all. Walls removed to create an open concept, main floor kitchen expanded, and modernized primary suite reconfigured to maximize the view, lower level transformed into entertainment. Space. This wouldn't just be an investment. This would be my statement. "This is it," I told James, who nodded in understanding. He'd heard the change in my voice, seen the spark ignite. The asking price was below market value due to the distressed sale situation. I made an offer the same day slightly above, asking to ensure it was accepted with a quick closing timeline. 3 weeks later, I signed the papers making me the owner of the lake house that would change everything. The purchase process moved quickly once my offer was accepted. The bank, eager to avoid foreclosure proceedings, expedited paperwork. The home inspection revealed issues. Electrical systems needing updates, some water damage, and the lower-level roof repairs required, but nothing structural that would derail the project. When I signed the final documents in the attorney's office, the momentousness of the occasion hit me unexpectedly. "Congratulations, Mr. Reynolds," the attorney said, handing me the keys. "You now own a piece of Crystal Lake." That night, I drove to the property alone. The house was empty. No furniture, no utilities yet, just bare rooms and endless potential. I walked through each space slowly, mentally cataloging changes and enhancements. When darkness fell, I sat on the deck with a battery-powered lantern, listening to small waves lapping against the shoreline. For the first time in my adult life, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This place would become not just a home, but a testament to my journey. The renovation began immediately. I took a 3-month partial leave from my firm, maintaining my most important client relationships while dedicating most of my time to the lake house. James assembled a team of trusted subcontractors, and we created a detailed timeline for the transformation. Week 1 brought the first challenge during demolition. Workers discovered significant termite damage in a supporting wall that hadn't been visible during inspection. The repair would add $20,000 and 2 weeks to the project. In my former life, this setback might have devastated me. Now I simply adjusted the budget and timeline, confident in my ability to overcome obstacles. The structural work came first. Reinforcing damaged areas, updating electrical and plumbing systems, replacing the roof, and installing new energy-efficient windows throughout. Then came the reconfiguration, removing walls to create an open-concept main floor, expanding the kitchen, and transforming the primary bedroom suite to maximize lake views. I became a fixture at the property, learning alongside the professionals. I helped tear out old cabinets, assisted with tile installation, and spent weekends painting walls in carefully selected shades that complemented the natural surroundings. The physical labor was therapeutic. Transforming the house became a metaphor for transforming my life. Some decisions were purely practical, focused on creating a valuable property with broad appeal. Others were deeply personal. In what would become my home office, I designed a wall of built-in shelving, specifically sized to display all the award certificates and recognition my parents had never found space to acknowledge. The primary bedroom was positioned to wake with the sunrise over the lake, a daily reminder of new beginnings. The kitchen was designed for entertaining with an oversized island and professional-grade appliances, a space where I could welcome people who truly valued my presence. The lower level presented unique challenges. Previous water damage had been more extensive than initially assessed, requiring complete reconstruction. I seized the opportunity to reimagine the space, entirely creating a media room, wine cellar, and game area perfect for entertaining. French doors opened to a lower patio with a fire pit overlooking the lake. Outdoor spaces received equal attention. The wraparound deck was rebuilt with composite materials requiring minimal maintenance. The overgrown landscape was cleared and redesigned with native plants that would thrive with limited care. The private dock was reinforced and expanded to accommodate future watercraft. Each decision, from the grain of the hardwood floors to the placement of outdoor lighting, was made with intention. This wasn't just a renovation, it was a reclamation, of space, of dignity, of self-worth. As the project progressed, I documented every phase with professional quality photographs. Part of me knew from the beginning that I wanted to share the final result to make visible what had been accomplished. These weren't just construction photos, they were evidence of transformation. Throughout the renovation, I maintained minimal contact with my family. My parents called occasionally, usually with updates about Amanda's pregnancy or questions about family gathering logistics. I responded politely but briefly. When asked about my own life, I offered vague assurances that work was keeping me busy. No one pressed for details. After 5 months of intensive work, the lake house was complete. The transformation was stunning. A dated, neglected structure had become a showcase waterfront property, combining rustic elements with modern luxury. The great room featured a stone fireplace reaching to the vaulted ceiling, surrounded by comfortable seating oriented toward panoramic lake views. The kitchen balanced functionality with beauty: quartz countertops, custom cabinetry, and a central island large enough to seat 6. The primary suite offered a private sanctuary with a wall of windows overlooking the water and a spa-like bathroom featuring a soaking tub positioned to enjoy the view. James and I walked through the finished house together, noting details that had exceeded even our ambitious vision. "You've created something extraordinary here," he said, gesturing toward the view. "This isn't just a house, this is a statement." The following week, I hired a professional photographer to document the completed project. The resulting images were breathtaking: morning light streaming through east-facing windows, sunset reflecting on the lake from the deck, thoughtful interior details captured in perfect focus. These weren't just real estate photos. They told the story of what I'd built. I hosted a small housewarming party for close friends and colleagues, people who had supported my journey and understood its significance. Notably absent were any family members. I hadn't yet decided how or when to reveal this achievement to those who had spent a lifetime overlooking my accomplishments. The decision came suddenly. The morning after the housewarming, I scrolled through my phone reviewing the professional photos. On impulse, I opened Instagram, a platform I rarely used, and selected 6 images that captured the essence of the property: the expansive lake view from the deck, the great room with its soaring fireplace, the professional kitchen, the master suite with its wall of windows, the lower-level entertainment area, and a sunset shot of the private dock extending into the crystal-clear water. I composed a caption that was deceptively simple, yet carried the weight of 3 decades of unspoken hurt. "Thanks for the motivation." Then I did something I'd never done before. I tagged my parents and sister in the post. I set my phone aside and went for a long swim off my private dock. Whatever happened next, I had already won the most important battle, recognizing my own worth regardless of their response. My phone was buzzing with notifications when I returned from my swim. The post had triggered exactly the reaction I'd subconsciously anticipated. My mother had called 7 times. My father had sent a series of increasingly urgent text messages. Amanda had left voicemails that started confused and ended indignant. I showered and made coffee before listening to any of the messages. The first was from my mother, her voice a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Rick, what is this house? Is this some kind of joke? Call me back immediately." The second from my father was more pointed. "Son, what exactly are you trying to prove with all this? Seems like a pretty wasteful way to spend money just to show off. Call us." Amanda's message dripped with passive aggression. "Wow, mysterious. Much. Kind of weird to just post pictures of some fancy house without explanation, but I guess if you need attention this badly." I scrolled through the comments on my post. My parents' friends expressed surprise and admiration. Distant relatives I barely knew suddenly wanted to reconnect. Former classmates and colleagues offered congratulations. Amanda had left a comment that read simply, "Interesting timing with the twins about to arrive. Always about upstaging, huh?" I didn't respond immediately to any of them. Instead, I spent the day enjoying my home, reading on the deck, preparing a meal in my kitchen, watching the sunset over the lake. This sanctuary was mine, created through my own efforts, and I wanted to savor it before the inevitable family drama intruded. That evening, I finally returned my mother's call. "Richard," she began, using my full name as she always did when upset. "What is going on? Whose house is that?" "It's mine," I replied calmly. I bought it 5 months ago and just finished renovations. But how? Where? How could you possibly afford something like that? There it was, the question that revealed everything. In her mind, I was still the child who didn't deserve expensive things, who couldn't possibly have achieved enough to afford luxury. I've been a partner at my firm for years. Mom, I explained patiently. I've made good investments. This is on Crystal Lake, about 2 hours from Boston. Why didn't you tell us? She demanded, skillfully redirecting to make my privacy the issue rather than their lack of interest. When would I have told you? Between Amanda's wedding and gender reveal party and baby showers, there hasn't exactly been space in family conversations for my news. The silence that followed told me the point had landed. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted. Well, it's lovely. We'd love to see it sometime. Maybe when things settle down with Amanda's pregnancy. You're welcome to visit next weekend, I said, forcing the issue. Saturday, around noon. She hesitated, undoubtedly mental checking for conflicts with Amanda's schedule. Finding none significant enough to decline, she agreed. My father's text came an hour later. Your mother says we're visiting your new place Saturday. Looking forward to it. Hope you didn't overextend yourself financially. Property taxes on waterfront can be brutal. Amanda's response was a lengthy message questioning my sudden need to flaunt my success and wondering if I was going through some kind of early midlife crisis. She concluded by saying she was too pregnant and too busy to visit, but would maybe check it out someday when the twins allow. The secondary wave of responses came over the next few days. My mother's sister called, gushing about how she'd always known I would do something spectacular. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. My father's golf buddies suddenly wanted to reconnect. Former neighbors reached out with congratulations and not-so-subtle requests for invitations. Most surprising was the message from Amanda's husband, Brian, asking if I'd be willing to discuss potential investment opportunities with him. He'd always admired my business acumen and thought we could partner on something mutually beneficial. I responded politely but non-committally to these overtures, recognizing them for what they were, reactions to the visible manifestation of success, rather than genuine interest in me as a person. Saturday arrived, and with it, my parents' first visit to the lake house. I watched from the great room windows as their sedan pulled into the circular driveway. They emerged slowly, looking up at the house with expressions I couldn't quite read, something between awe and discomfort. I greeted them at the door and led them inside. My mother gasped audibly at the view through the great room windows, the expansive lake stretching to the horizon, sunlight dancing on the water. My father moved immediately to examine the construction, running his hand along the custom millwork, peering at fixtures and finishes with what looked like suspicion. This must have cost a fortune, he finally said, his tone making it unclear whether this was criticism or admiration. It was a good investment, I replied neutrally. Would you like a tour? I guided them through each space, watching their reactions. My mother exclaimed over the kitchen, noting features she recognized from home renovation shows. My father remained largely silent occasionally, asking about practical matters. Heating systems, insulation, property taxes. The most revealing moment came when I showed them my office with its wall of achievements, framed award certificates, and recognition spanning from high school through my current career. My mother stopped before it, her expression faltering as she scanned the display. I didn't realize you'd won so many awards, she said quietly. Most of them came home in my backpack, I replied. A few were at ceremonies you couldn't attend. She flinched slightly, but didn't respond. The tour concluded on the deck overlooking the lake. I'd prepared lunch, nothing elaborate, just sandwiches and salad. As we ate in the outdoor dining area, my father finally addressed what had clearly been on his mind. So what's this all about, Rick? The house, the post tagging us. What are you trying to prove? I considered deflecting, but decided the moment called for honesty. I'm not trying to prove anything anymore, I said. For years I tried to prove I was worth celebrating, worth acknowledging. I watched Amanda receive elaborate celebrations for every milestone, while being told there wasn't money for even small recognitions of my achievements. This house isn't about proving something to you. It's about what I've proven to myself. My mother set down her fork, her face flushing. That's not fair, Rick. We've always been proud of you. You were just different from Amanda. She needed more encouragement. Did she? Or did you just enjoy celebrating her more? I asked, keeping my tone, even despite the emotion rising in my chest. My 30th birthday passed without even a phone call, Mom. 3 weeks later, you rented a ballroom for Amanda's gender reveal. The same venue I'd suggested for a birthday dinner and was told was too expensive. That's different, my father interjected. A baby is a family milestone. And a son's 30th birthday isn't, I asked. Or his college graduation, or his partnership at his firm. When exactly do my milestones count as celebration-worthy? The uncomfortable silence that followed was broken by my mother's quiet sobs. Part of me wanted to comfort her to retreat from this confrontation, as I always had. But another part, the part that had built this house, held firm. I'm not saying this to hurt you, I continued more gently. But for once, I need you to hear me. I've spent my life being told there wasn't room. In the family budget, in the family schedule, in the family's emotional bandwidth, for my achievements to matter. I stopped expecting it years ago. This house isn't about showing off to you. It's about finally celebrating myself. My father, never comfortable with emotional conversations, stood abruptly and walked to the railing, staring out at the lake. When he turned back, his expression was defensive. We did the best we could with what we had, he said. Different children, different needs. We never meant to make you feel less important. I know you didn't mean to, I acknowledged. But intention and impact are different things, Dad, and the impact was real. The conversation continued awkwardly through lunch. My parents asked surface-level questions about the renovation process, carefully avoiding deeper topics. As they prepared to leave, my mother hugged me tightly, something she rarely did. It's a beautiful home, Rick, she said. You've done well for yourself. We are proud of you, even if we haven't always shown it. It wasn't an apology, but it was something, an acknowledgement, however small, that something had been missing. The following week, Amanda texted, asking if she could visit. I agreed, somewhat surprised by her initiative. She arrived alone, explaining that Brian was working, and she needed some sister-brother time anyway. 8 months pregnant with twins, she moved carefully through the house, her typical confident stride replaced by a cautious waddle. I showed her each room, answering her questions without embellishment. When we finally settled in the great room with glasses of lemonade, she looked at me with an expression I'd rarely seen directed my way, something like respect. So, this is what you've been doing while I've been planning weddings and making babies, she said, gesturing around the room. Among other things, I replied. She was quiet for a moment, running her finger around the rim of her glass. I knew you know, she finally said, about how they treated us differently. I always knew. The admission hung between us, unexpected and weighty. You never said anything, I observed. She shrugged, looking uncomfortable. What was I supposed to say? Hey, stop giving me everything and pay attention to Rick. I was a kid. Then I was a teenager. Then it was just how things were. Did you ever feel guilty about it? I asked, genuinely curious, rather than accusatory. Sometimes, she admitted, but mostly I just accepted it. It was easier to take what was offered than to question it. And honestly, I liked being the special one. Her candor was refreshing, if painful to hear. I never hated you for it, I told her. I hated the situation, but not you. I know, she said, meeting my eyes directly. That's why you're a better person than I am. We talked for nearly 2 hours. The most honest conversation we'd ever had. She acknowledged the favoritism without defensiveness, and I expressed my hurt without attacking her. By the time she left, something had shifted between us. We weren't suddenly best friends, but there was a new authenticity to our interaction, a foundation for a different kind of sibling relationship moving forward. Next time, bring the babies, I told her as she left. They should know their uncle's lake house. It's going to be part of their childhood. She smiled, a genuine smile without the competitive edge I'd grown accustomed to. They'd like that. So would I. 1 year after completing the lake house, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Professionally, my success continued to grow. My real estate portfolio expanded to include 3 additional properties, an oceanfront condo in Cape Cod, a small commercial building in downtown Boston, and a mountain cabin in the Berkshires. My reputation in the industry solidified with other developers seeking my input on challenging projects. More importantly, my personal relationships evolved. I established and maintained healthy boundaries with my family. I was present, but no longer seeking validation. Our interactions became more authentic, if sometimes uncomfortable, as old patterns were disrupted and new dynamics established. My parents made visible efforts to correct the imbalance, though decades of habits didn't change overnight. My father called regularly to discuss business ideas or seek my advice on investments, his way of showing respect for my expertise. My mother sent cards for every minor accomplishment, sometimes overcompensating to the point of comedy. I accepted these gestures with grace, recognizing them as genuine attempts at connection. Amanda and I developed a relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition. After the twins were born, a boy and a girl named Thomas and Grace, she brought them to the lake house regularly. Watching her parent with awareness of the patterns she'd grown up with gave me hope that the next generation might experience a more balanced family dynamic. 6 months after my parents' first visit, I met Sarah at an industry event in Boston. An architect specializing in sustainable design, she challenged my thinking and expanded my vision for future projects. Our professional collaboration evolved naturally into a personal connection. Unlike previous relationships where I'd hidden parts of myself with Sarah, I shared my full story: the childhood wounds, the journey to self-worth, the ongoing process of family reconciliation. Her understanding and perspective strengthened my own healing. Thanksgiving of that year marked a milestone. The first family holiday hosted at the lake house. My parents arrived with dishes prepared from old family recipes. Amanda, Brian, and the twins came with children's books and toys to leave for future visits. Sarah joined us, blending seamlessly into the family dynamics while providing silent support during tense moments. The gathering wasn't perfect. Old patterns occasionally emerged. My mother automatically serving Amanda first, my father interrupting my stories while listening intently to Brian's. But these incidents were briefer, and often corrected sometimes by the very people who had perpetuated them for years. Progress wasn't linear, but it was happening. In January, I received notification that I'd been named Regional Real Estate Developer of the Year by the New England Development Association. The award ceremony was scheduled for March at the Boston Harbor Hotel. Without expectation, I sent invitations to my parents and Amanda. To my surprise, not only did they RSVP affirmatively, but they called with questions about appropriate attire and whether they should arrive early to get good seats. The night of the ceremony, I spotted them immediately in the crowd. My father in a new suit, my mother wearing a dress I'd never seen. Amanda and Brian beaming with what looked like genuine pride. Sarah sat beside them, having insisted on sitting with my family, rather than at my reserved table near the stage. When my name was called, I walked to the podium, amid applause that included my family's enthusiastic support. As I accepted the award and gave my brief speech, I glanced toward their table. The expressions I saw there, authentic pride, perhaps tinged with regret, stirred complicated emotions. This was the validation I'd sought for decades, arriving when I no longer needed it to know my worth. At the reception afterward, my father approached, with 2 glasses of champagne, handing one to me. "I want to say something," he began awkwardly. "I know we missed a lot of moments like this over the years. Your mother and I have been talking a lot since seeing your house and all those awards. We got it wrong, Rick. We got it very wrong." Coming from my stoic father, this admission was monumental. I accepted it with a nod, knowing that long conversations about the past wouldn't change what had happened, but acknowledgement could help heal the wounds. "I appreciate that, Dad," I said simply. "I'm glad you're here tonight." We clinked glasses and turned to watch my mother charming Sarah with family stories, carefully selecting ones that included me as a central character rather than a footnote. Through continued therapy, I worked to process these shifts in family dynamics. My therapist helped me recognize that healing wasn't about forgetting the past or pretending the hurt never happened. It was about acknowledging the reality of my experiences while choosing how they would shape my future. "Your parents' validation feels good," she observed during one session, "but the real victory is that you no longer need it to know your value. She was right. The most profound change wasn't in how my family saw me, but in how I saw myself. The wounded child seeking attention had become a man who understood his worth, wasn't determined by others' ability to recognize it. The lake house remained my sanctuary, but its meaning evolved. What began as a statement, proof of what I could achieve despite being overlooked, transformed into a gathering place where new memories were created and old wounds gradually healed. Weekends often found the property filled with friends, colleagues, and increasingly family members making genuine efforts to connect. On quiet mornings, I still sat on the dock watching sunrise over the water, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. Deep wounds leave scars that remain sensitive to touch. But alongside that pain grew understanding, forgiveness, and a profound appreciation for the resilience that adversity had built in me. Perhaps the most important lesson was recognizing that success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving yourself right. The motivation that began as a desire to force recognition had transformed into something healthier, building a life that reflected my values rather than responding to others' limitations. The greatest gift my challenging childhood gave me was the determination to define myself rather than accepting others' definitions. The hurt became purpose. The exclusion became independence. The overlooked achievements became private victories that built confidence no external validation could provide. If you're watching this and feeling unseen in your own family, know that your worth isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it. Build anyway. Achieve anyway. Celebrate yourself when others won't. The day may come when they see what they've missed, but your life will be meaningful and successful whether that day comes or not. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and share with someone who might need to hear that they're worth celebrating, even if they have to be the one to throw the party. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the people who were meant to see you won't, but that doesn't make you any less worthy of being seen.